Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman, and welcome to The Last Frame Live. Tonight, slow down to speed up. If you want to learn photography faster and better, and you know the drill, if you're watching, please leave a note in the chat. Let me know who you are. Let me know where you're watching from. Already, gosh, I got a lot of people here. I got Louise from Florida. Glenn's here from Thursday in Australia. Let's see, we got Keith in Virginia. Ruth is here from out in the West Coast. Pateo in Switzerland. Nick down in Maryland. How you doing, Nick? Glad to see you. Ty in New Jersey. Alvin in Richmond. Lynn in New York. Charlie in Mexico. How bad is it when I start knowing where people are from and they don't type where they're from? I don't know. So anyway, listen, if you're not watching live, no worries. You know the drill. Leave me a note in the comments below the video. Let me know that you were here, right? All of you are part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame live every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. And of course, it would help a lot more people find out about The Last Frame if you do me a solid, hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the show to other photographers. And of course, while you're down there, feel free to hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. You can also share out lastframe.live. I just put that in the chat for you. Either one will do just fine. All right. So, quick reminder. Not so quick, but a reminder. I've been talking a lot recently about the Tog Knowledge learning community that I started. But just in case you missed it, here's your opportunity to get in the door before it's too late. And don't worry, there's no money involved. I'm not going to sell you anything. The only requirement is that you have to sincerely want to improve your photography. And like any other learning scenario, you have to be willing to put in the effort. I'm building a unique learning destination for photographers. It's called the Tog Knowledge Learning Community. Whoops, it would help if I hit the right link, Joe. We'll get it on the fourth try. There it is. So the question that I keep getting, what is Tog Knowledge? It's actually kind of simple. Tog Knowledge is the experience that you gain when you have a camera in your hand. It's essentially the learning that happens, when the rubber meets the road, when you take all of that stuff that you learn in workshops, in YouTube videos, in books, and you put it to practice to learn the way that humans learn best, by doing. But my goal with this community is to add a social element to it and to create a supportive and a focused space that's dedicated to helping each other advance the photography skills in a more productive and a more supportive way than you're going to find on Facebook or honestly in any other online community. So as I mentioned, it's free to join, but you have to participate. If you want to stay, lurking is not going to benefit you, and I do purge members every 6 months who have not contributed. And by the way, that doesn't mean you have to be there every day. In fact, I don't want you there every day. Once or twice a week at tops, check in, see what's going on. There's a lot you can learn. Contributing is commenting, maybe a post here, maybe a post there. But again, it takes effort. So it's kind of like a cross between a camera club, a meetup group, a photography convention, and a little bit of a Facebook group, but I hate to use that analogy. So the bottom line is, look, number one, if you're antisocial, don't join, because you will get to know photographers from around the world. You will interact with them. There are presentations that take place in the group. We do weekly community meetups. You can read a photography quote of the day, and you can post an image to illustrate it. You can share your photos without getting critiques, or you can share your photos and get critiques, whichever you prefer. And also, we have, well, you know what? Instead of me telling you everything, you should check it out. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat window for you. It's also in the description below the video. So feel free to check it out. That way I won't spend the whole hour telling you all about Tog Knowledge, because I could tell you a lot more about it. I'm very excited about it. And so far, the people that have joined seem to be really enjoying it. Also, if you're one of those folks that visits the photography blogs on a regular basis, F-Stoppers, Petapixel, any of those, you can get all of the latest news, like moments after it's published, in Tog Knowledge. That's right. Everything from Petapixels, F-Stoppers, DIYphotography.net, Photo Focus, Shutterbug, Pop Photo. There's a bunch of them. All show up in the Tog Knowledge community within moments. DP Review, that's the other one. Okay, and yes, it's completely legal. I'm not stealing their content. They give it to me to be able to publish. Okay, so anyway, check it out. I do hope to see you there. It's another way to kind of continue the conversations that we have here and to learn even more, not just from me, but from photographers all over the world. Right now, we are up to 31 different countries that are represented in Tog Knowledge. All right, so our topic tonight, slow down to speed up. So a lot of you, and this one, honestly, this comes from the heart because I haven't scripted it. I didn't go out and do a whole lot of research. I'm not going to give you a bunch of science tonight. I'm hopefully going to talk some real practical stuff that if you can just pause for a minute, maybe take a step back and look at the big picture, you're going to realize just how spot on this information is and how much of an impact it can have for you. So, last week I was out in Chicago at ClickCon, which was an amazing time and an amazing event. So for all of you that I met in Chicago, it's great to meet you. Thanks for tuning in tonight and checking things out. Those kinds of events for me are always a ton of fun. They are extremely chaotic and just crazy. It's a kind of event where you can be walking, and this happened to me, and I did it, and it was a blast, walking to get the elevator to go back to my hotel room, and then spending 20 minutes in the elevator lobby where there just happens to be a grand piano in this really ornate hotel, and doing an impromptu lesson on lighting and posing and everything else as people are going back and forth to elevators to get to the rooms and different events. Just a really, really cool event. So, the one thing that I really enjoy at these events is, number one, I get to meet a lot of you. I get people in my classes and all around this hotel that are shooting, learning, trying things, experimenting, failing, succeeding. But I get to watch all of that, and I get to see it. And what does that get turned into? That gets turned into, here's an opportunity to teach something. So this is something that I've talked around a lot, is this idea of slow down, speed up, and how to help yourself progress better and faster as a photographer. But this event last week at ClickCon really kind of put it into perspective for me, because this is an event where people shoot nonstop. I mean, it is like rabid photographers, because there's models everywhere and there's tons of makeup artists. So there's just creativity and opportunities for creativity at every turn. So there's no sitting still. There's no just hanging out and chilling. It's like shoot, 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 shoot. So people bring a ton of gear. Every photographer shows up with lighting and modifiers and stands and you name it. I mean, photographers walking around with all kind of wheelie carts and you name it, hand trucks with gear like everywhere. It's cool. It's a lot of fun. So what I started to notice, though, as I was working with some of the photographers, people say hi or they'd stop me and ask a question. And, I love teaching. So I would hang out and I would try and help them through their shot and work them through what they were doing. And I started to make a set of observations that kind of became frustrating. Frustrating in the sense that I was realizing it was going to be very hard to help these people be successful in that moment. And that was that, number one, everybody was in a hurry. Now, in their defense, part of the reason they were in a hurry is because there's all these opportunities to shoot. So, of course, you don't want to miss out, right? But number two, so many of them had so much gear that they didn't really know how to use. And look, I want to be really clear right now. I'm not talking trash about ClickCon or anybody at ClickCon. I am extremely impressed. It's definitely one of the coolest events that I've ever presented at. I've seen this at other events. I see this regularly. it just really kind of gelled together in this kind of hyperspeed environment. And it really started to bring into context for me the problem that a lot of us have, because I still deal with this problem because I still learn. There are still things that I'm trying to learn. There's things that are important to me that I want to get better at and know more about in photography. The day I stop learning, you can take my gear, I'm finished. It's all over, right? So we live in a time period. Well, small step back. Part of what I did when I was on my flight home, I was thinking a lot about that kind of frustration that I had and realizing that in these short little snippets of time, it's kind of really hard to get through and make a big difference in what people are trying to do and how they do it. And I started to think about the fact and realize that when I learned back in the dark ages, right? Back with film, back when we didn't have the internet, I didn't really have any of these problems. And so at first that kind of sounds like a bit conceited, but it's not a matter of being conceited. There's a real simple reason that I didn't have these problems. I didn't have the same kind of resources that we have today. I didn't have the internet, so all that YouTube information, the information overload, that didn't exist. And, I was a teenager. I didn't have the money to just go out and buy thousands and thousands of dollars worth of gear, right? My first camera cost $75, and I had to empty my savings account for that. But the point is, you really had no choice back then but to learn one step at a time. And you really had no choice but to learn how to solve problems. And you really had no choice but to learn how to really make your gear work. And when I say really make your gear work, I don't mean, okay, you read the instruction manual. I mean, number one, you understand what's in the instruction manual. So the reading part should be the obvious part, right? I mean, you understand what's in the manual and you have really figured out how you can use every single one of those features and use them to benefit your photography in one way or another, right? What we have today with all this amazing technology that we have is the ability to run before we walk. But come on, we all know what happens, right? You run before you walk, you stumble a lot more. And because you stumble, you scrape your knees. Because you stumble, you mess things up. And because you stumble, it actually can take you a lot longer to get where you want to get. A lot longer. And that's really the point. So there was a piece of advice that I was giving to attendees. Like whenever somebody would stop me and say, "Hi, Joe, it's nice to meet you. I watch your videos," whatever. I would ask people what classes they were planning to attend. And then I would say, okay, here is my advice before you go to any of your classes. And you guys have heard me talk about, a couple weeks back, I did a topic of why do most photography workshops suck? And the short version was, it wasn't because of the workshop, it was because of the attendees, right? So the advice that I gave to everyone that I could tell, before you go into every single class, go back to the internet and look up the title of the class, the topic of the class, the description, right? And then go to the website for the instructor of the class to look at their work. And then you're going to write down 5 questions. 5 questions that are going to help you be able to do what they do. So those 5 questions are based on the things that when you look at their work, you wish that you could accomplish what they do, but you can't, okay? So, sorry gang, let's get rid of the spam that we got going on here, okay? And there we go, okay. Those 5 questions are designed for you to be able to get to a point where you are going to be able to do work that is similar to theirs or on the same level as theirs. And then you take those 5 questions into the class with a simple understanding That simple understanding being that the instructor may talk about them, may not talk about them. At an event like ClickCon, the idea was for instructors to talk for no more than an hour. Most of the classes were 2.5 hours long. So the idea was that we should talk for no more than an hour, and then it was meant to be experiential, like hands-on shooting, right? So that means that you have a scenario where the instructor may not tell you as much as they normally might, or let's face it, a lot of new instructors teaching at ClickCon, which, by the way, really cool. So they may not go as in-depth into things based on their own experience. Could be any number of reasons. But since you have all of that one-on-one time with the instructor, you will then have the ability to ask questions, whatever number of questions didn't get answered. So the idea is you go to every class with 5 questions and you make sure you don't leave that class until you've got the answer to all 5 questions. Otherwise, this is what I tell people, you're really just going to be entertained, right? Because let's face it, you don't go to an event like that to build a portfolio. You go for experience, you go to learn. The reason you don't go to build a portfolio is because every one of those models and every one of those looks and in every one of those outfits is going to be photographed by 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 people. So everybody's got similar pictures of the same person, right? And that's great for learning, not great for a portfolio, not great for making yourself stand out in a crowd. So that's how you get the value. You have those 5 questions, right? With our own gear, even if you're not going to an event like that, because most of us have the disposable income to be able to buy a camera and accessories and multiple lights and multiple modifiers and gadgets and all that kind of stuff, we tend to jump in way too fast with all these accessories. Many cases because we've seen a YouTube video where some guy uses them and that looks really cool and I want to be able to do that, so I need to get all the gear. But what that guy doesn't tell you in the YouTube video is that he probably first learned how to do it without all that gear. He probably first learned how to do it with simpler gear. And then down the road, he was able to afford the nicer, easier to use gear. So real short and real simple. Slow down to speed up means a little bit of self-discipline. It means taking a really good, and I see some of the comments that are coming through from some of you that, that you're kind of relates to you and you're kind of making those connections, right? You have to do a little bit of self-evaluation. You've got to be able to look at yourself, or not able, willing to look at yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself. If you fit into this category, you have to be honest with yourself. Are you carrying a lot of gear that you don't really have full mastery of that gear? Notice I'm not saying mastery of techniques. I'm not talking about creativity. I'm saying, do you have full mastery of that gear? They don't let you drive a car until you have at least a certain level of mastery of the car. In that case, obviously, you could kill people. It's kind of important. But the fact of the matter is there's that recognition that you have got to master a certain amount of skills to be able to use it properly. The same really applies to a camera. It's just that you're not going to kill anybody with it. You're just going to add to the depth of really bad pictures that we find all over the internet, but you're not going to kill anybody, right? So, you've got to be honest with yourself, gang. But here's the thing I can promise you. I can absolutely promise you. And I'm very proud of the fact that I also, when I go to these events, I hear from photographer after photographer. I get messages here online who tell me that they took that piece of advice, that they've heard me give that piece of advice in one form or another, at one time or another, and they've gone back to the basics. They've gone back to the basics with their lighting or with their camera, and they've worked on their foundational skills. And at that point, their work started to progress much faster. So, that's really the key. So I've left out the word so far, but there's another word that comes into play in this slow down to speed up scenario. And that word is practice. Athletes practice to get better. Musicians practice to get better. In fact, I'm going to share one of my guilty pleasures is TikTok. Not gonna lie. It's how I put myself to sleep every night. 15 minutes clears all the stuff out of my head that I've been working on for the day, and I'm able to go to sleep. It's wonderful. So I want to share a TikTok with you. I stumbled on this. I stumbled on one that was shared by a rather well-known musician, but this gentleman is the original. This is the guy who first posted this video. I want you to listen. His name is Marcus Grant. I want you to listen to the message.
How did you get so darn good?
Practice.
It's magical. It's a mystery.
It's practice.
I'll never understand how some people can just be so naturally gifted.
Practice.
I'll never be as good as you.
You will if you go practice.
How did you get
There you go. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter what your endeavor is. It doesn't matter where you're trying to get to with your camera. If you want to improve your work, it requires practice. So since most of you who watch me photograph people, let me give you some examples of what is not practice. Because I think sometimes we lose sight of what real practice is. Practice is not a social event. You don't practice with other photographers. No. Practice is a solo endeavor. You may need a model. That's fine. You're actually better off at first to practice with a mannequin. If you can afford cameras today, if you have a camera and more than one lens and some kind of lighting, even if it's just one light, you can afford a mannequin. Just keeping it real, less than $70. But practice is something that you do by yourself. Practicing with a friend, going to a meetup, practicing with a group of people is not practice. One, because you have tons of distractions. Two, because you are probably not making all the decisions. That, by the way, is another reason why you don't go to workshops and meetups to build your portfolio, ever. Because you're a fraud if you use those pictures. You didn't do the planning. You didn't select the model. You didn't contact the model. You didn't communicate with the model. You didn't prep the model. You didn't help the model select the outfits. You didn't style the model. You didn't do the model's makeup. You didn't do the model's hair. You probably didn't even set the lighting. So how could you possibly, in all good conscience, put that in your portfolio to say, look what I can do, when you actually can't do it because you actually didn't do it, right? So practice is not social. Practice is boring. Practice is intentional. Practice is something that is repetitive. Practice is consistent. Practice is constant. Practice is never ending. Now, the better you get, let's say you want to make money, be a professional photographer. The more work you get and the busier you get, the less time you have for practice, which means you do less practice, which that's a win, right? But practice never ends. Let me tell you another thing that practice isn't. Practice isn't going from paid gig to paid gig to paid gig to paid gig. Even if you're only getting $25 or $30 for the gig. You don't take your first wedding to practice. You don't take a portrait session, not paid, to practice. That's really very immoral. You're not breaking any laws, but you're also not being very honest with people or very fair. Practice is something that we do behind closed doors. Practice is something that we do on our own. Practice is something that we do to improve ourselves. And practice is the only way you're going to build a solid foundation of depth of field, of the inverse square law, of the relationships between shutter speed, lens opening, and that gain slider called ISO. Practice is the only way you do it. You can't do it in a YouTube video. You can't do it in a book. You can't do it with other people talking about it. You have to sit down with that camera and you have to do it. period. Okay? So, and by the way, really quick here before I finish up, I will handle some questions. We're going to have about 30 minutes. You don't want me to have to bore you with other stories. I can gladly bore you with other stories. But how can I help you tonight? If you're here, come on, what are you struggling with? And let's get you pointed in the right direction. But to wrap up with this concept of slow down to speed up, it's not meant to be cute words. It's not meant to be meme-like. It's actually meant to be very, very practical. I can assure you, because I've done this with a lot of photographers who are now working professionals, and I'm very proud of that fact. Get back to the basics. Sometimes you have to kind of put the brakes on. Just stop yourself. Take a big step back and fill in the blanks. You know, we all have this amazing technology around us. And I don't mean just the internet stuff with YouTube and everything else. I'm talking about the gear that we have. You could pick up a new camera today, not knowing a damn thing about how to use that camera, and you could take amazing pictures with very little effort. That's awesome. But you know what else it does? It gives you a false sense of ability. Meaning that camera's going to help you a lot of the time. But it's not going to help you all the time. It will let you down. Because at the end of the day, it's a computer. And computers can't see what we see. They can't process the way our brains process. They can only work with ones and zeros, right? So, you got to build the foundation. Charlie's got a good question here, and it's one that I'm glad to answer. Charlie said, do you still practice with a mannequin? I bought a mannequin because of your videos. It helped me a lot. Charlie, I do still practice with my mannequin. Her name is Lola. And as a matter of fact, I've talked about this before, but before every teaching event that I go out to, so before I went to Chicago last week, the week before, I had Lola set up in my studio for about 4 days. I believe it was 4 days. And for at least an hour each of those 4 days, one of the days I can tell you it was actually about 3 hours, I spent time in the studio practicing for ideas that I wanted to shoot and wanted to create. You might be thinking, like, why would I do that? Because I'm teaching stuff that I know and all that. Well, for a couple reasons. Number one, I want to make sure that I'm on the top of my game when I am talking about those things. A lot of times just by going through the process and working with all of the things in the case of like a color class, working with gels again and all of that, that helps me to make sure that I'm kind of right on the top of my head with all the things that I need to talk about in that class. But also when I go to all these different events, I don't want to do all the same things that I've done before. That's boring. So I want to have new ideas. So I use those practice days to, number one, work on some new ideas. And number two, to also figure out what am I packing. Not in terms of the gear. The gear is always set, but in terms of the foo-foo, the materials, the things that I'm going to wrap around the models. Because this color class that I taught at ClickCon was a class where we did fashion portraits. In fact, before we sign off, I'll show you the image that I created at the end of this class. Next week, make sure you tune in, and I'll give you guys a full breakdown with some behind the scenes images and all that kind of stuff yet. But I don't have all of the behind the scenes stuff yet. So by next week, I'll have it all laid out, and I'll be able to share all that with you. So I'll get that up and I'll show it to you in a minute. But Charlie, Mannequin is still very, very much a part of my process. I'm seeing here, this is good. So a lot of you have paid attention. We've got a lot of people with Mannequin names. Good for you. And Tony, a business question. I love business questions. I'll come back to yours. Okay. Let's see. So let me just make sure I didn't miss any here. Cool. Yeah, and actually, Jenkins, this is a good point here too. I bought a mannequin, a full body one. Hubby and teenager don't like to be my models. You know what? It's interesting. There's like a common logic that would say, well, look, if you've got other people in the house, like, make them suffer through it, or if it's kids, even bribe the kids. They're the worst people you can practice with. They really are. Because they know you. They are your relatives. They're not going to give you the time and the attention. The reason for working with a mannequin, guys, it's really, really simple. At some point, you got to really learn the basics, like the nitty-gritty basics. Mannequins, they'll hold the pose forever. They don't move. They don't talk back. You don't have to feed them. There's no OSHA violations if you don't give them breaks. They're awesome. That's why you get a mannequin. For all of the money that we spend on photography gear, less than $70 for a mannequin is a no-brainer. It's like a no. If you want to get into lighting and things like that, it is an absolute no-brainer. Michael, do I still have a web link to the mannequin? You know what? I'll get you on here really quick. Bear with me 1 second, gang. Let's see if I can type fast enough to get this. And what I'll do, gang, is when I'm done tonight, I will add it to the description below the video. But for right now, let me find her, see if she's going to come up. Wow, so I'm getting all male ones. Oh, there's one of them here. So let's hit this one and see all the buying options. Whoa, that's not what we want. That one's expensive. You know what, gang? It's not coming up right away. I will find it. I will post it underneath the video. I apologize. Usually it shows up right at the top of my page. But I happened to look it up just the other day, and I know they're still like under $70. So I'll track it down for you, and I'll add it, Michael. Okay. Cloud Strife, I only have a foam head to practice with. Is a fully articulated mannequin needed? So by the way, the ones that I'm talking about, they're not fully articulated. A fully articulated, like full height mannequin would probably cost you well over $1,000. They do exist, but they're very expensive. I'm talking more of kind of like a dress mannequin. It has a head. It has like, 2 movable arms and 2 movable legs, and it's like on a stand. It's not a requirement by any means. What's nice about that, the one that I have, the one that I recommend, you can actually take the torso off the legs. So what I do is I set the torso on a posing stool, right? So that way I basically got a human sitting on a posing stool, right? No legs, of course, but it's the same height. It's the same body shape. And the important thing with the mannequin is that you actually have a real face. You don't want like a smooth face with it painted on. You want a real face so that you actually have depth to the face. You want to have a chin. You want to have eye sockets. You want to have a nose. The one that I recommend, and I'm still scrolling here. I'm not finding it. I'm wondering if I spelled it wrong. I might have spelled it wrong. But the one that I'm talking about also has glossy eyes, so you can see your catch lights, which is also very important. And that's the one why I recommend that one. So again, I promise you, I will share it as soon as give me like 10 minutes after the end of the show. I'll track it down and I will add it to the description. So just go back to this page and then refresh the page, and I'll make sure it's there. Okay. Let's see here. I saw another question. All right, so I think that's all the back stuff here. So there's some newer ones in here. Where was it? So Tony had one other question from Cafel Music. I have 2 110 centimeter shoot through umbrellas for group shots tomorrow. Will it be enough wise? So 6 meters wide. So Cafel Music, do you mean the group's going to be 6 meters wide? So that's like 18 feet, right? That's a fairly decent sized group. 110 centimeters, so it's about 30 inches. Yeah, so Cafel Music, give me a little bit more information. Type quick. Here's what I need to know. 1, are you shooting this inside or outside? 2, if it's inside, approximately how tall is the ceiling in the room that you're shooting in? Right, that's going to be important. And is it a white ceiling? And then third question is, how much running depth do you have? So how many meters from like where your group will be to where you would run into a wall behind you? Give me that information, and then I can help you out a whole lot more. Okay? All right. So let's see. I think that's all the questions that we had there. So Tony C had a business question. I'm always a sucker for business questions because it's a scary time when you turn in that corner to try and make money, and That's a time we don't want to be making mistakes. So Tony, he's starting a newborn home studio. Ran it out on Craigslist, gets no leads. Any advice? So Tony, I would say number one, if you are advertising on Craigslist, you're bottom feeding. So that's not a good plan, right? I don't think that Craigslist is the kind of place that new moms and new dads are hanging out looking for photographers. Just not, right? Plus, when you think about it, for the last, 9 to 12 months, mom and dad, depending on how old the newborn is, right? Mom and dad have been spending time on like Pinterest and probably Instagram even, looking at newborn photos and home decorating ideas for how to decorate the nursery. That's Pinterest especially, all those kinds of things. Craigslist is like not big on the list of this is where I'm going to go to look for picture ideas. And I hate to say, Tony, Craigslist is not on anybody's list. In fact, I'm not going to lie, I haven't heard the word Craigslist in several years. I know it's still out there, but it's not the kind of place people are going to look for a photographer. Now, let's take this a step broader. And Tony, feel free to fill in some information for me, okay, to be able to take this a step further. But if you are on Craigslist because you feel that you don't have, the portfolio yet to be able to get work, there's a better way to solve that problem. And that is kind of what I was talking about before with the slow down to speed up and practice situation. You're going to need to do some work for free, which I actually talked about 2 weeks ago, right? You're going to need to do some work for free, go out and find some, families with newborns and offer to build up that portfolio. You need to get some quality images to build demand, right? Sadly, traditionally, the people that are on Craigslist selling photography are the people that essentially have no clue what they're doing. And they're selling to people who essentially have no money, right? So unless you're trying to sell to people that have no money, and look, everybody deserves to have pictures of their newborn. So, the thing about photographers on Craigslist, they're actually serving a valuable service, right? But if you're actually trying to build a business, it's not going to be on Craigslist. So my advice would be to get yourself more active on Instagram. Get yourself, and I see you mentioned that it's just your boy, and that's cool. Congratulations, by the way. So definitely, yeah, you need to get some pictures that aren't of your child, and you need to build that out. So 10 to 1, while your wife was pregnant, you guys may have taken a birthing class or something like that. So she may have friends. She would have interacted with other moms, maybe met some other moms at the hospital. So your wife has probably made some connections during the course of her pregnancy, because a lot of moms, they tend to network and look for other people going through what they're going through. God knows, I don't blame them. So I would start there, actually. Reach out to some of those connections your wife may have made and say, hey, I'd love to do some pictures for you for free. And literally, you need to go out and do them for free, because also you have to understand that photographing your child is a hell of a lot different than having to photograph somebody else's child. It just is. It's a whole different process, right? You're very comfortable with your child, and your child's very comfortable with you. That's not the case with, every other kid that you're going to photograph. That's a whole different ballgame. So you need to get that experience in. And then, yes, you should start a dedicated Instagram profile that is just for your maternity pictures. You're going to start it out a little bit slow because, yeah, you're going to initially seed it with some photos at your of your child, but you need to have a branch. Brian Ellison, at no charge. That is correct. They're going to shoot those pictures at no charge. Okay. Roman, thank you so much, man, for the super chat. I really, really appreciate it. Working for free is very important to all photographers. Okay. Just absolutely very, very important. But Tony, you're going to start to build up a dedicated Instagram for your newborn photography. You are going to get a Pinterest profile going with your newborn photography. And I would also encourage you, if your wife is in any local groups on Facebook for new moms. A nationally recognized, a worldwide or national group for new moms is of no value. Don't start posting your ads in there. They'll get really angry with you very fast, and rightfully so, right? But if your wife is involved in any local groups for new moms, that's a great place to start sharing it. Once you get a small website together, Tony, the other thing you're going to do is you're going to go, and I'm going to assume that you're in the United States. If you're not, I apologize. But if you're in the United States, you're going to download an app called Nextdoor Neighbor. Nextdoor, one word, neighbor. And once you have a website up, you're going to do a, hi, my name is, post in your neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. And just mention, like, I am this by day, but I am a photographer part-time and growing a business. You're going to be very honest. These are your neighbors. These are people that you live near, that you may see walking down the street. And you're going to say, but, I love to shoot newborns. I have very reasonable prices. And here's a link to my website. Keep me in mind. Or if you know anyone that could use my services, do that. Nextdoor Neighbor is a great place for local networking, but don't spam it. So yeah, Tony, they have Nextdoor Neighbor in Canada. So there you go. It's pretty much all through North America. So, and Tony, thank you so much for the super chat. So those are the kind of places that you're going to start. So here's the underlying piece, Tony, just to make it easy. Well, not easy, but to hopefully get you a little bit more focused. Think of it as this, and Nextdoor Neighbor is the best example I can give you. Your marketing shouldn't be marketing. What you need to be doing as a guy who's building a side hustle, photographing newborns, is you need to start making connections, building relationships. That's the key. Do that, you will find business and business will find you. And now, by the way, you still need great photography, so keep working on that. Practice, 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 right? You don't have to go out and buy a newborn mannequin, but use yours, because they'll tolerate more, right? But really up your game, but then build relationships and the business will come to you. It's the best way to get your business off the ground. Okay? All right, let's see here. Going back to Cafel Music. So the wall is 6 meters maximum wide. The ceiling's pretty high. It's a big space. I have no idea how far they'll stand from the wall yet. It's for a business event party, happy shots. The umbrellas are 43 inches each. Okay. So yes, here's what you're going to want to do, Cafel Music. 2 lights, 2 umbrellas will be fine. Set them up on either side of the camera, but here's the trick, right? So you're going to want to put them probably about 5 feet, so a little less than 2 meters on either side of the camera, right? And you are going to aim them crisscrossed, right, across each other. So the one on your left is going to aim towards the right side of the group, not all the way to the end, but, about, let's say 8/10 of the way to the end. And the one on your right is going to crisscross and aim to about 8/10 from the end on that side. The next most important thing is the height of the umbrellas. Get the umbrellas high so they're angled down. The higher, the better, depending on how many rows of people. Let's say that you have 2 rows of people. It's not a really big deal. But if you have 3 or 4 or 5 rows of people, that's a lot of depth. If the umbrellas are low, you're going to set your exposure for the first row and the people in the back will be dark. Or if you set your exposure for the people in the back, the people in the front will be bright. So you want the lights up and angled down so that the distance between the light is closer to the same from the front row and the back row, right? So I don't mean directly above them. I mean up and then angled down. And that's honestly the simplest way to light a group like that. I will say that if the ceiling is not too high, so if it's a white ceiling and it's, let's say maybe 14 to 20 feet high, right? So that's a tall ceiling, but that's not like a church ceiling, right? But if it's white, you could actually get away with bouncing flash from those 2 Godox AD400s and not using the umbrellas at all. So both would work. My advice to you would be, if at all possible, get there early, set up early, and have a person kind of stand in a couple of spots and just test your lighting to make sure that it's even. The most important thing that you can do is get that lighting even. And that's why I have you feathering the two lights across. You'll get a nice, smooth light that way. I've done that many times myself. It works awesome. Okay? All right, good luck with it. Let's see. K. Yolanda Turnquest. Do I edit my own photos or do I use an online service? I currently still do all my own work. I have used online services in the past. But I've used a retoucher from India who has done great work for me. The only reason I'm not using them at the moment is that I recently started using the Sony cameras. And so I'm a big believer, before I'm going to send my work out to have somebody else to do it, I need to be able to do it all myself. Because working with a retoucher, it's very, very important to be able to communicate with them in their language and to be specific about what you want. Otherwise, you're just sending stuff out and you're hoping it looks okay, right? That's not how you work with an external service. You actually have to be very specific about what you want and how you want it done. So I'm really kind of reacclimating myself to to the Sony cameras and getting comfortable with them. And so for that reason, I'm not currently using one at the moment, but there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not sure exactly why you're asking, but I promise you, like, if you're thinking like, oh gosh, I'm a fraud if I do that or something, God, no. Some of the greatest photographers in the world, names that we all know, they use retouchers, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all, okay? But do treat it like a relationship. You got to be a good communicator, and then you'll get better results, okay? And so let's see here. What did Oliver tell me here? I started working with foldable backgrounds and always had the problem that the wrinkles in the background are visible in the photo. Any solution besides editing afterwards? Oliver, great question. It's a problem that we all deal with any kind of background you're going to fold. One, different types of material. There's a video that I have on YouTube. Let me find that video here for you. And here, I'll switch over and we'll track this down. Because the video or the material that I use for these is kind of it's like a crushed velour type, this one, okay? Check out this video when you have a chance. And that's a material that doesn't wrinkle. But for instance, like the FJ Westcott, like they just came out with the X-Drop Pros, the big ones, and then of course they've had the small ones for a long time. That material doesn't wrinkle as long as you're, slightly careful with folding it up. The other option that you can do is, of course, buy yourself a portable steamer and take a few moments and steam the backgrounds. But unfortunately, one other option, Oliver, and it depends on space, is put the background far enough away that you can use depth of field to even it out. But you can get yourself in a lot of trouble with that and wind up having too shallow depth of field and part of your subject's out of focus. So I would try and avoid that solution if you can, okay? Kafel Music, you asked about how many people are in the picture. Will it matter as far as lighting power goes? No, not at all. The lighting power, the only thing that's going to impact the lighting power is how broad a space are you trying to light. But I promise you, what you're talking about, I could do it with Godok's AD200s. So, and I know quite a few wedding photographers that work with Godok's AD200s, and they would have no problem with a large group doing that. So, Alvin, what app am I using for Sony for editing? Depends on what I shoot, to be honest with you. So I'm kind of going through a bit of an evolution with my post-production right now. If I'm working in the studio, I tether to Capture One, and I use Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop because, of course, I do a lot of compositing and things like that, right? But for all of my photography of like my grandsons, playing sports, whatever, I've been working with the Luminar products and I'm absolutely in love with them. I've been using both Luminar 4 and Neo, the newest one with the AI technology in it. It's pretty sweet. It just simplifies everything. It's super fast. easy. I really love the way that they've laid those softwares out, and I love what they're doing with them. So, as much as I love the simplicity of only ever using one thing for everything, we're not really at that point in our photography world right now. There is too much great technology that's out there, that while in a lot of cases it would be easy to say, oh yeah, I just use Photoshop for everything, done. And I could use Photoshop for everything that I do. But there are really, really good reasons for me to use these other programs for different elements of my photography. So, and if nothing else, like I said earlier, the day that I stop learning, I'm done. So it's also important to me to kind of keep up with them and have a really good understanding of what's out there. So that's also a big thing for me too. Okay. Jason, what's the best way to do fill flash during the golden hour when working by yourself? And then he went on to say, I've tried to bounce the flash up into a white reflector, but this is awkward. Would it be better for me to use my 8200 in a softbox on a stand instead? Yeah, Jason, I would say, honestly, if that's what I was doing and you felt the need to, have that flash fill while you're shooting at golden hour or sunset or that type of thing, then yeah, I would do it with a softbox. Absolutely. So Peter Ferris here said, where to go? Sorry. Love Capture One seems better and faster than Lightroom for tethering, just my opinion. Yeah, I can confirm for you, Peter, that's not your opinion. It's the truth. It is. Better is an opinion, right? But faster, oh my God, Capture One is a bazillion times faster at rendering an image than Lightroom. That is definitely one of the Achilles heels of Lightroom when it comes to tethering. It's great if you're doing product work or that kind of stuff, but otherwise, yeah, it's not really ideal. So, okay. Beverly, I might have missed the answer to the question. Let's see. On the Mannequin, if it doesn't have glossy eyes, does nail polish work? Yeah, actually, that would work just fine. You could, just put a thin coat of nail polish on, and that would do the job perfectly. For those of you that may not be working with a Mannequin, but if you're starting to pay attention to catch lights, especially because somebody like me talked about them so much, a cool little trick and tool that you can use is go on Amazon and search for black marbles and just order a small little bag of black marbles. And then what you do is you take a black marble, you hold your hands like this. Remember how people used to paint like the little puppet mouths, on their hands, right? Okay. Take the marble, stick it in there. And now what you have is basically a pupil in an eye socket. So if you want to be able to take a quick test shot and see what the catch lights are going to look like, so this is if you're not working with a Mannequin, you can just hold your hand in front where your subject's going to be, take the test shot, and you'll see exactly where your catch lights are going to be in the shot, which can be super, super helpful. Okay. So Beverly, I hope that helps out. Okay. And let's see here. Did I miss anything else? All right. I think I'm caught up with everybody. So here, I told you guys that I would share with you the shot that I did in Chicago. Next week, I'll give you the whole breakdown. So I'm not going to enter any of the how did we do it stuff or any of that tonight. But next week, I'll show you, and I'll have it on social media actually later this week with behind the scenes stuff. But this is the shot there. Let me see if I can't get myself out of the way. So let me move the picture over a little bit. We'll do that, okay? So for me, what I am really, really in love with the shot is the fact that it's a very different, there we go, okay? It's a very different color palette than what I normally work with. And I have to share a little bit of the credit, a little bit, but I am very proud of this from a collaborative standpoint. I set this up at the end of my color class. What had happened was I had this young lady up front to do my demo, and I actually had a tutu around her neck, and that was what I did the demo with. So when I left and we set up other groups, the group that stayed with her, they did some shots of her with the tutu, and then they pulled out this cap and this scarf that I had in my bag of goodies that I took to Chicago with me. The sunglasses were actually from one of the sponsors of the event. Tamron had provided all of us. We got these little goodie bags and we had, Tamron sunglasses. So They had a lighting setup very similar to this, and they had the girl facing in the opposite direction where you could see the word Tamron on the side of the glasses. It's like on the other arm over here. So when we finished up the class, I wanted to work with this young lady, and I kind of liked where they were headed with it. So I went ahead and kind of rejiggered the lighting, flipped the key light, flipped her, changed the colors a little bit, and then did my Joe thing, getting really, really picky with the details and the way this was wrapped and making sure all of her hair was tucked out of the way, getting the hands placed, and then getting everything adjusted just right to get the umbrella reflected in the sunglasses. So that's in camera, that shot. The only thing that wasn't there is the texture that you're seeing on the background. So when I show you all of it next week, I'll show you how I added that. Super simple. But basically, this was a shot that I did. But here's the cool part, okay? The umbrella has a Godox 8200 in it. And we wanted to be able to gel the 8200, which that's easy enough using Magma. I use Magma gels, right? So you snap the purple gel on the Magma, and that's what's on it. It's a purple gel on the key light, okay? It looks magenta because of the other lights that I've added in with it, and I tweaked the color a little bit in post. Not much, you'll see next week. But the challenge with using the Magmod stuff on a Godox 8200 in an umbrella, it was a Westcott 32-inch collapsible shoot-through umbrella. So they have a short stem on them. So by the time you put that Fresnel head in front of the umbrella, there is not enough space for the light to fill the whole umbrella. You only get a tiny little sliver of light through the middle of the umbrella, which means you're actually getting really harsh light from it. So the hack was to use a mag sphere. So for those of you that don't know what the mag sphere is, let me just come back to this here really quick. We'll type in Magmod, and let's see, where's Magmod's website? That's what I want. So the mag sphere is this little guy here. So I had a purple gel on the Fresnel head with the mag sphere over top. That white dome lights up the full umbrella. So at that short distance, I was still able to get the full use of the umbrella. So that was kind of the little problem-solving piece to that. Which was a lot of fun to be able to kind of work that out. So I'll give you guys the whole breakdown on that next week and show you some behind the scenes stuff and lighting diagrams. But if you want to see it sooner, keep an eye on my Instagram. Hopefully it'll be going up tomorrow. And but that was shot with a Sony a7R4A and a Tamron 70-180 f2.8 lens at about 101 millimeter is where I was set power-wise. And here, since, good, I've only got 2 minutes, so I'll give you guys this last little piece because I know people follow and care. You shouldn't, but anyway, I did finally, while I was at ClickCon, Sony was there. They had a table and, you know, they had sample gear. And it's one of the things that's nice about being an instructor and being a little bit known in the industry. I got to go out to dinner with people like Rick Friedman and Robert Vanelli, but I went out to dinner with the Sony reps while I was there. And so I spent about an hour one afternoon playing with the Sony a7 IV. I've been wanting to get my hands on that, trying to decide where am I going with this Sony gear and what am I going to do. As you've heard me say, I'm still using all of my Olympus gear, but I've made the decision. It's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. It's time to part with the Olympus gear. I ultimately, and I've talked about this before, I don't like working with different brand cameras. So I'm going to pick up an a7 IV. That way I'll have, you know, the a7R4A in the studio. The a7 IV is going to be my day-to-day camera for everything else. I'm going to keep one EM1 Mark III from Olympus and probably 2 lenses for those very few occasions, but important occasions where I want to do live composite. Beyond that, it's time to go ahead and make the switch and, you know, work with the Olympus stuff. And full disclosure, part of my incentive for that is I'm doing a little bit of teaching later this year for Tamron. I'm hoping to build out that relationship with them. So there's a little bit of a financial incentive, but I'm not becoming a Sony ambassador. Sony's not giving me the cameras. I'm not even giving a discount or getting a discount on them. I'm actually very, very happy with them, really enjoying them. But I'm making my life harder right now by switching between two different brands when I shoot. I've never liked doing that, and I honestly do find it annoying. So I knew that I kind of needed to make a decision one way or the other. And my decisions were, considering sticking with Sony, picking up the A7 IV, or getting rid of the A7R 4A and picking up, a couple Olympus All-in-One bodies. The Ohm one is awesome, but I'm gonna go ahead and play with the full frame stuff. So those of you that have switched to Olympus because of me, you should not be switching anywhere. You should not be doing anything different. As I just explained to you, part of my motivation is business motivated, because I'm hoping to be able to make some money by, doing the change. Peter, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. But as always, I will share my journey with all of you. I will continue to educate for all sensor sizes and all camera brands. And as I said, when I was an Olympus ambassador, and I'll continue to say it, I don't care who the brand is, I want to see all of these companies succeed and flourish, because if that happens, we as photographers all benefit. The more these companies flourish, the better gear that we get, the more exciting technology we get, and the less it costs. So that's extremely important. But one of the great things about dropping all of my sponsorships, which I did, and you'll hear more and more of this from me over the remaining year, I am no longer in a position where I have to be nice to these companies. It's not that I want to be mean, but I also want to be able to hold them accountable. There are a lot of things that happen in this industry where photographers honestly are sheep. We sucker into a lot of things that ultimately cost us a lot of money. And if we were a little better educated, we wouldn't do it. And if we wouldn't do it, then the companies wouldn't do it, right? And I'm not trying to make the companies evil or bad. Look, they gotta make money, right? They do. Same as with the camera companies. I don't want to see any of these companies. Even Westcott, Peter Ferris, cheaper prices. Are you listening to Westcott? Yeah. And I'll tell you what, that new X-Drop Pro that they came out with, I will be buying one of those. That's the perfect size for me. The regular X-Drop was a little too small for me to use on a regular basis. That X-Drop Pro, I'll buy it. I wish it was a little cheaper, but I do think it's worth the money. I absolutely do. So yeah, Westcott still has products that they're just ridiculously overpriced. But at the same time, they've also got some excellent products that are very worth having. And so, that's the thing. I want to be able to hold people accountable. And better yet, I want to educate you folks so that when you are buying gear, you're being smarter about it and you're being more practical about it. And, I think we need a little bit more of that in the industry. So it's a bit of a risk on my end because I'm passing up some money-making opportunities, but I'm working on other ways to make that money, and I think I'm going to do just fine. So anyway, gang, listen, time for me to roll. Thank you so much. I'll get the Mannequin link in the description below the video. Give me 10 minutes. It'll be there. But in the meantime, please go pick up that camera and shoot something. Because your best shot, it's your next shot, gang. Adios, stay safe, have a great week.